Okay, hi everyone. Now this is the recording to help you understand what are the effects of volcanic hazards on natural systems. Okay, so for the past few lessons, we have been looking at how volcanic hazards actually affect human systems, right? Okay, so when we use the word systems, we don't just talk about immediate effect. We talk about how it further impacts other parts because of the interaction it has with other groups. Okay, so for example, we don't just say that the farmland is destroyed. We go on to talk about how it then affects the other parts of what the farms interact with. Okay, so this is what we've been looking at in detail. And today, this is just to clarify about natural systems. Okay, you've already learned last year about ecosystems. Ecosystems is about different parts of nature being connected to each other, okay, interacting with each other. So likewise, when we are looking at volcanic hazards and the effect on natural systems, we are looking at how when the volcanic hazards affect one part, how does it then affect another part of the natural system. Okay, so the whole idea, you need to think about systems, right? It's not just about the effect, immediate effect, okay, but from then on, how does it affect something else? Okay, so for natural system, very straightforward. Usually it's about ecosystems. And today we're going to look in detail exactly what are the effects. Okay, but before we look at the effects, right, let's take a look at some pictures and what are the effects that you've seen. This is from Mount St. Helens. Mount St. Helens is actually in the United States. It was very famous because in the 1980s, it had a major volcanic eruption. Okay, how major? You can see that there's a big hole over here. Okay, so what happened was that this whole slope was exploded during the eruption, causing a major landslide, okay, and pyroclastic flow. And you can see that this whole area has been buried in ash, in volcanic debris, and in lahar. Okay, so what are the effects of the natural systems of such eruption? Let's take a look. Okay, and of course there's other case study examples. Let me take you around a tour. So this Mount St. Helens, okay, where exactly is it? I want to zoom out. Don't mind my mouse. Okay, so it's in North America. This is the United States. Okay, so Mount St. Helens is over here. Okay, so you can see that the northern slope, okay, let me bring you down to eye level. Okay, you can see that the northern slope has been erupted away due to volcanic landslide. Okay, and this is already in 2023. You can see that the debris still continue to not have much things growing around here. Okay, what was here before? This was actually a large forest, all right. But because of the landslide and the eruption, it burnt off, buried the whole forest. And what are the effects on the ecosystem? That's what we're going to look at. Okay, another example, the one that I've been telling you all along, Mount Merapi. Okay, so let's bring it to Mount Merapi. Okay, so this is Mount Merapi. All right, let's bring it to eye level. Okay, so you can see the city over here. We have talked about the effects on the city and the villages over here, correct? Okay, so you see that there's a lot of greenery. It has recovered from its 2010 eruption. But what was it like right after the eruption? Let's go back in time. Okay, so this is, let's say, 2011, just 1 year after the eruption. Okay, you can see that the lahar is still here. Okay, you can see that the areas around this river over here, there's still a lot of lahar. It was flooded. Okay, so it killed off a lot of the ecosystem over here. But if you bring it to modern day, you see that they have recovered. Okay, let me bring you to another place, Mount Pinatubo. All right, we've talked about this a lot during lesson, right? Okay, about how in 1991 there was a major eruption. Okay, so this Mount Pinatubo today, bring you back to eye level. Okay, the reason why there's a huge lake over here is because it used to be much taller and the whole top exploded into ash during the 1991 eruption. Okay, so you can still see some of these rivers here. It was a much wider river, but it has been buried and narrowed down because of lahars. Okay, we will go back in time to 1991 when just after it erupted. Okay, oh, the resolution is not very good. Okay, yeah, the resolution wasn't very good, so not very helpful. Okay, ignore me what I just said. Okay, but yeah, oh, okay, now I get 1993. You know, they don't have a good resolution up front. But from here, you can roughly tell that you see a lot of these gray areas is the lahar or effects of pyroclastic flow. Okay, as you can see, it burned off or it buried huge areas of the ecosystem. Okay, and before that, it was all green. All right. So, what are the effects on the ecosystem? I think you all roughly know that it's about destruction. But what are the steps? How does each hazard cause that effect on the ecosystem? And what are the similarities so that we don't need to memorize so much? This is what we're going to look at. Okay. So if you go look at your handout that we have given to you, which is CW4/2. Okay. So we've already done the later pages. All right. Which is for the human systems. Okay, so we're just going to look at page 2, which is for natural systems. All right, so what are the effects then? Okay, so as I told you, because you're looking at natural systems, we cannot just say that animals die or plants die, full stop. We must go on to say how does it lead to the other parts of the system being affected. So such as the destruction of ecosystems or the collapse of ecosystems. Okay, what's the difference? Destruction means that it has been destroyed, totally gone. Okay, maybe because the whole area has been wiped out, the whole geographical area has been destroyed. Okay, whereas collapse, right, the whole place may not be destroyed, the geographical area may be retained. It's just that because one part of the ecosystem has died off, the other parts that it interacts with it die off also, and then the other parts also die off, and in the end, the whole interaction stops. So that's the collapse. Okay, so collapse is more about the interaction stopping. Okay, whereas destruction is about the geographical area being destroyed. All right. Okay, so we were saying that some of the volcanic hazards can flow into rivers. Okay, what are some of the volcanic hazards that can flow into rivers? All right. So so the idea of flow suggests that there's something flowing down. Okay, so what are the common ones you have already learned? It includes lahars, lava flow, or debris from volcanic landslides. Okay, so it'll be good for you from your diagram. You might want to point out what are these hazards and how it leads to here. Okay, the landslide. Okay, now what happens when you flow into the river? Sometimes it can, because there's a lot of ash and a lot of pollutants. Okay, so it can pollute the river. So what's the big deal? When you pollute the river, it reduces the water quality. Okay, what's the big deal about reducing water quality? How does it affect aquatic animals? So when aquatic animals are living in a place with poor water quality, it can become less healthy and they cannot survive. Okay, so when they cannot survive, all right, so when they cannot survive, what happens is that eventually they may get killed. Okay, so what's the big deal if a few aquatic animals, a few species of fishes die? All right, what's the big deal? Okay, so when they die, the ones that depend on them, okay, so when they die, they may get extinct, and this may cause the other animals that depends on it to be unable to survive, which then cause the ecosystem to collapse because they interact with the other parts of the ecosystem. Okay, now what do you mean by loss in biodiversity? Biodiversity means the variety of species. All right, so diversity means variety, so bio means species. All right, so when you have less species, it means that the ecosystem that depends on it is less likely to survive as well. Okay, so what are the other parts? Can I give you about a few minutes to think through before I go through with you?
A few moments later, a few minutes later, one eternity later.
I believe you have gone through already, so let me walk through with you. Let's continue with these that we've done earlier. So lava flow, debris, they flow into the river, they pollute. This is what we talked about just now. Okay, sometimes they block the flow of the river. What's the big deal about blocking the flow of the river? Well, okay, so sometimes when the river cannot flow, it accumulates and it will flood. Okay, and what's the big deal about it flooding? When it floods, it can cause the surrounding areas to, okay, so when it floods into the surrounding area, it can cause the surrounding habitats to be destroyed. It destroys the area and it destroys the food supplies of the wildlife. Okay, so when this whole geographical area gets destroyed, essentially the ecosystem is destroyed. All right, it's similar to what I showed you just now about Merapi, right? Okay, so like what I showed you about Merapi just now, right after the eruption in 2011, okay, some of these rivers, why is it that the whole surrounding area of the river is brown? It's because the lahar flowed in, blocked the flow, and it flooded and destroyed the ecosystem around it. Okay? Alright, so that's how it destroyed the ecosystem. How else can it affect the area? Well, when you block the flow of the river, basically the animals and nutrients cannot flow downstream. Okay, so what happens is that for the aquatic animals further downstream, they don't get the nutrients, they don't get the animals that they prey on to survive. Okay, so what can happen to them? As a result, these species can get killed, and then the things that the other parts of the ecosystem that rely on them will probably cannot survive as well, causing to collapse. Okay, now sometimes your volcanic gases can also form acid rain. Okay, and what is the big deal about acid rain? Acid rain, when it falls into the river, it can pollute directly. All right, and what else? Some things can burn through, can bury large areas quickly. Okay, so what is it that can bury large areas quickly? You can have your lava flow, or your debris from volcanic landslide as well. Can cause this. Okay, and when this happens, it destroys large areas. All right, so the habitat and this get destroyed, and then destruction of ecosystem. Okay, sometimes some things leave behind thick layer of ash, or they will burn through the forest. Which are the ones that can burn through the forest? Okay, so you have your pyroclastic flow that can burn through the forest. So pyroclastic flow, they can burn through the forest, right, which will then kill a lot of habitat and food supply, which then destroy also. Okay, sometimes it can leave behind thick layer of ash, all right, which lands on the leaves. Okay, so what leaves behind thick layer of ash? Sometimes the pyroclastic flow, sometimes it's the ashfall. Okay, maybe I should change the color, then it's easier to see. Ashfall can also lead to this. Okay, so when it lands, then of course you all have learned previously, when you all ride both as is side by side steps, right? Okay, so when you suffocate animals, they cannot survive, or they bind their eyelids together, they cannot survive. So these few species that cannot survive will lead to this. Okay, and then the other animals that depend on it also collapse as a result. All right, then what's the big deal about leaves landing on ashes landing on leaves? Okay, there's a few ways to look at it. One way to look at it is to see that the trees cannot hold the weight of the plants anymore, and then it breaks off. And so if such a huge area of trees in the forest cannot hold the ash, the forest gets destroyed. Okay, another way to look at it is that it may not be a lot of ash that caused the trees to break off. It's just a case where the ash will choke up the leaves, and the leaves cannot absorb and release air, oxygen and carbon dioxide during photosynthesis. Okay, so these trees will then die off and cause this large area of forest to be destroyed. Okay, so when this large area of forest is destroyed, what will happen? Well, this forest, these trees are also habitats, right? Okay, so you can just jump straight to the idea of, let me change color, easier for you all to see. So it can lead to this one over here. Habitats get destroyed. Okay, which is the destruction of the ecosystem in this area. All right, now let's go back to here. Acid rain, okay, what can it do? Basically, it can actually destroy the forest directly. Let me change color. Okay, because it can actually cause the leaves to wilt, and then it follows this blue color path. Okay, oxygen being pushed off, what does it do? Well, it doesn't really cause trouble to the trees, because once it's pushed off, the trees can continue to photosynthesize. Okay, but the bigger problem is that it suffocates the wildlife and cause the wildlife to die. Okay, so this is your effect on the natural system. Now it's just messy here, of course, and you need to reorganize and consolidate it yourself. Okay, but as you can see, they all follow very similar path to explain how it then affects the whole ecosystem. Okay, so now when you look at the volcanic hazards, please don't just look at, oh, animals die, people die. Think further. In essence, we use the term further impact. Okay, how does it then further impact the other parts of nature that interacts with it, and how does it affect other parts of the human system that interacts with these humans? Okay, I hope you have a clearer idea from this recording.